So I guess now it's time to start really the round table after this introduction. So we have prepared together a few topics. The first one was lack of training and operational experience. I would suggest, if the members of the round table are there, that we skip it because it's kind of easy to address. Okay? Next one is a little bit more complex, and maybe I can ask to Ron, Todd, and Eddie asking whether you have a very small example. So in 1 minute, an example which is popping out of your head like this.
I have a pretty good example of how hardware scalability actually software scalability has challenged us. We have a very large lab environment where a number of product groups come and run test passes through there. So we can see up to about 9,000 hosts come on and off the network in one fell swoop. Well, if v6 enabled, then that means you've got that many neighbor discoveries happening, you've got that many ARPs happening, and you've got DHCP requests coming, all of which process switched by, in this case, it was a 6500 switch. Well, I'm sorry, it's done. It dies for a little while till it figures it all out. Because it was done in software. So it's something we really hadn't realized when we started down this road, that we really had to pay attention to the scalability of the CPU of the hardware having to deal with these process switched packets. Also, you have to remember about in an environment where you have a large scale like that, in a 6500, the TCAM, v6 takes up more TCAM than a v4. Takes up 2 versus 1. So a host that took up 2 TCAM entries now can take up to 10. So there is some scale challenges you really have to pay attention to there, and you have to really look forward and make sure that the hardware you're picking for those locations can scale to what you think your needs are going to be.
Okay, Ron, can you say something in the same vein? No? Okay. Eddie?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Todd. Dual stack, you've got to keep a separate v4 and v6 forwarding tables. They have finite capacities. Things like NAT64, any NAT scheme, there's going to be a finite capacity there. And so it's definitely scalability is one of the #1 things when you're dealing with hardware.
Okay, so we've seen the problem. Have you seen any evolution since 15 years on this?
So one thing that we did is based upon the RFCs, the timer for neighbor discovery is 30 seconds. Then you get your randomization piece, so it ends up being a little different. We pushed that out to 10 minutes, and that solved a lot of the problems in just having that much churn going on. Otherwise, you have to really throw more CPUs and more hardware at it to make it scale.
Okay, and I mean, Ron, you were also mentioning issue with the feature parity and vendor not promising or not delivering what they're promising. So how do you fix this? How do you address to deploy your network?
What we did is, in the initial testing in the early phases, late 90s, early 2000s, we saw the problem with performance because of everything implemented in software instead of hardware. So we early on made it a requirement that as part of feature parity, the performance must be equal for v4 and v6, and that anything in a product that we purchased, if it was implemented in hardware for v4, it had to be implemented in hardware for v6. There was an example of one vendor that was an intrusion prevention system vendor that we were planning to use. They said their product was going to support IPv6. When we first put it on the network, yes, it supported it, but v6 performance was low, and they said our next version would actually support IPv6 in hardware. When they came out with the new software, they found out that their ASICs still could not do it at line rate. They had to go to an entire next generation of hardware, rolling new ASICs in order to do IPv6 in hardware. It took us 4 years to get where we wanted to go, but that's what we insisted on. Had to be run at line rate in hardware. You're going to have to be patient, but at least most of the vendors are getting there now.
Okay. Yes, Yannick?
I just want to say that network hardware support of IPv6 is actually far better than when Ron was actually doing it. I mean, the vendors have gotten it, so the story is much better today. But we, the community, needs to demand that the vendors actually do this.
Eddie, you? Oh.
Thank you, Ron, for taking all those arrows. Somebody's got to be the first to the beach.
Eddie, you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things that we definitely recommend to solve the network hardware issues, and one of it's just doing interop testing. You know, there's a lot of vendors that offer conformance suites or interop suites. You know, here at the show, EANTC, the German lab, was really featuring some of the interop testing, but getting a canned suite of tests that you can run against various vendors, it helps you, you know, figure out issues before you deploy. And then in terms of just performance, you know, testing with real applications at scale is very key. And that can really help determine where your issues are, both before deployment and even after deployment.
Okay. Any feedback from the room on this? What's your experience? Do you think now that the vendors are catching up? Who thinks that the vendors are still very late in the game? So like 15 people. Who believe now the vendors are catching up? So they are mostly there. Well, thank you, Jordi. So one person, right? You are the only one. Assuming that we are catching up. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Let's go to Spain then. We can fix it. It depends upon the products. Which product do you have in mind? Can you use the mic for the back end? The mic, please. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I talk about the networking tools that are not so advanced today, and it's a very important point, but it has been mentioned before, because no ISP or operator will deploy really commercially IPv6 if it has not all the necessary tools for managing and exploiting its network.
I'd like to add to that some point, just to mention by Yannick, parity, v4, v6 parity, that's really a pain. So if we ask a vendor, do you have IPv6? Yes, I have. So just think of features. Usually it has fewer features. And if it has the same features at the functional level, think of performance. So many times it's in the ASIC versus software. So we can, of course, be positive, and it's really going in the right way. So thank you for implementing and keep going, of course. What I mean, we cannot say today that IPv6 has really succeeded in being as a peer of IPv4.
Okay, Mark, want to say something?
Yes, I do.
Surprise, surprise.
Thanks all of you for testing our equipment and finding our bugs. If we could do it ourselves, we would, but you guys just have such better talent in terms of actually finding those bugs for us. It's magnificent. And along those lines, one of the things we have been doing lately is creating a list, really, of the pioneers such as yourself internally, and identifying those that are ahead of the game, okay, pushing the envelope, and putting you into our special bag of people that we're following and escalating problems to, irrespective of whether or not we're your vendor of choice, okay? So it's based on the fact that you are out there testing our buggy stuff. And so we want to use that in the cases that you find that. In addition, we want to be testing it ourselves more. But I just want to recognize that what you're doing isn't falling on deaf ears. And if you're having a problem, let me know, and we'll try to get you on that list. Yeah. But, you know, it's not for everybody. You've got to be pushing the envelope, and you are by turning on and off 9,000 hosts at once. Doctor, it hurts when I do this, you know. Don't do that.
Yeah.
And if you really want those TCAMs to scale, you'll run IPv1. It had 8 bits.
Or even less.
So I did want, the question I wanted to have, sorry, after all that, is to move it up the stack a little bit. You guys have some of the the best IPv6 networks in the world on the campus, and you're getting IPv6 running. What's it like? The applications, are they breaking? Are they using it? Did Happy Eyeballs help, or is it making it more difficult for you to debug? What's it like at the application level for your troubleshooting and your users, et cetera?
So maybe we can just first reply to your questions regarding the feature parity and the line, because I saw a couple of people in the roundtable wanting to do it. And the application stuff, there's a topic which is coming, so if we can wait.
I should have reviewed your question, sorry.
Yeah, what I wanted to respond to was your comments about hearing us, because I can attest that I think about a year ago I put up some charts comparing lots of vendors with reds and greens and so forth, and actually Cisco was one of the worst on a particular thing, but Cisco saw it, internal, lots of emails, new release, please try this, we tested in our lab, and now Cisco's one of the best on that particular one. So thank you very much for responding to that. That really helps, because that was the point.
By design.
Yes, that was the point of the chart of shame, is you sort of put everybody on report and we get results. So thank you.
Okay, Irena.
Yeah, I also wanted to mention the same thing, that basically there was something that I didn't add to my slides, but there was also like a protocol standards missing that weren't supporting IPv6, and 2 weeks ago Cisco announced that now they are going to release WCCP protocol for IPv6, so thank you. Yeah.
We had to actually go back and redo an RFC and everything for that. That was crazy. You're welcome.
Any more comment from the room or from the table on this? Yeah, okay. So next one should have been security for the lack of time, and we have been bored to death, right, regarding security. So I guess now you understand what's this, so we skip it. So ISP offering. I mean, I think most of the people around the table identify it, and by having deployed V6 with customers, I can also tell that, yeah, feature parity for ISP are also lagging. So how can we address this? How have you done when you deploy network?
One thing that, for example, Google did was to basically include IPv6 support in all our procurement operations and so on procedures, which also included contracts with ISPs. So basically, if an ISP doesn't support IPv6, then we wouldn't peer with it. We wouldn't use it as a transit. And it's not that that really changed anything, but I mean, for sure, I mean, before we saw a lot of issues with the ISPs, like, for example, even if they would claim that they support IPv6, for example, to turn up a BGP peering, it would take much longer than for IPv4, or they would claim that they support IPv6 and then they ask us to wait for, let's say, several months until they do an infrastructure upgrade at a certain location where we want to peer with them. And, or for example, they would say they support IPv6 and then they would run tunnels, for example. So, as I said, the good thing is that that's changing. Now we see more and more ISPs providing native IPv6. And again, the SLA that they provide, they aim it to be the same as IPv4, which is not 100% true for now, but as I said, at least things are moving in the right direction. So thank you guys all for that as well.
And Todd, how are you fixing this with Microsoft?
I don't think we're going to fix the problems, but no, I did add one thing about this. ISP offerings, I include in this also the carriers that we actually buy inside the corporate network services from. So WAN circuits, for example. We really struggled with carriers providing V6 on their MPLS VPN solutions. And we had to push a number of vendors really hard to get them to support our V6 needs. And it's taken a number of years for them to get there, but now we're starting to see the momentum rolling, and we're seeing more and more carriers offering V6 in their MPLS VPN environment, which that's what we were after. So I think we've been successful in that piece.
Okay, Jacques, anything to add regarding the European Commission? How did you get the connectivity? Was it easy to find a provider?
Yeah, on security, in fact, we are thinking it's really an important issue because, especially in administration and at the European Commission, obviously, the aspect of security is extremely important. It took me, for example, about 6 months to get authorization from our Bureau de Sécurité to install this IPv6 Wi-Fi access point, okay? Because all aspects should have been analyzed and so on. We have launched a study also during about 8 months about security aspects. And if you wish to get the results of this study, they are available on our website.
And regarding now the connectivity, how did you find the service provider connecting the commission?
Well, about the connectivity, we didn't work too much on it. We have settled, in fact, a working group to address mainly the problem of privacy, link with addressing. I mean, static or dynamic IP address, randomization of global identifier, and so on. These are aspects which are also linked with security, and we are trying to investigate more in this. But for the moment, we don't have any conclusion on our side.
Thank you. Any experience to share in the room regarding, yes, there is a mic needed in the back.
My name is Wilhelm Böddinghaus. I work with Strato. We needed a new ISP in Berlin and Frankfurt, and we talked to tier 1 providers, and we first learned that tier 1 in IPv4 is not tier 1 in IPv6, and the other way around. We talked to one of those tier 1 providers, and we saw when we compared the routing table that they were missing 1/3 of the IPv6 worldwide routing table. So we said, you're not tier 1. Okay, we bought from another company. We didn't even accept an offer from this so-called tier 1 provider. Now they have solved this issue, but now we have a new contract for 18 months, so they are off. It's a pity for them, but you have to compare the routing tables. Even if they say they have the global routing tables, they might not have, because there are no new competitors in the IPv6 field. There is a company called Hurricane Electric. They are coming up, and they are faster than the others, and the others don't accept them to be a tier 1 provider because tier 1 is marketing and not reality. So be careful if you talk to tier 1 providers.
So your advice is basically to check at least the routing tables and check the SLA.
You have to check the routing tables, otherwise you just get 2/3 of the internet. You might get a full legacy internet, but the new internet you don't get.
Okay, thank you. There is another question from Yannis.
Is there any information on mass market ISP offerings? You know, we're a small company. If we tell our carrier that there's a problem, they don't jump to fix that within minutes. And when we went dual stack with our website, we had a lot of peering problems. We were blackholed several times. Those of you who were here last year may remember that it actually happened from here. And I think that's a problem of actually mass market V6 access, because in V4, that problem would have been visible within minutes and would have been fixed within minutes. And as long as there is not a lot of users actually using IPv6, there will not be the demand to fix those problems fast. Any information on that? If there's anything going on, if there's...
You mean cleaning up the peerings?
Yes.
Improving them?
On the one hand, cleaning up the peerings, yes. How could we do that as a small company, as a small user, actually, of bandwidth? And on the other hand, when will be there the mass deployment of access for users?
I guess the mass deployment will not fix it on this enterprise panel, but that's the key point. Any other feedback, either from the round table, which are not a round table, but 3 square table anyway, but who cares? Okay, next point that we got was everything related to management and tooling. So, sorry, Dan.
Eric, Dan Wang, I wanted to jump on that last problem with peering. I have a presentation tomorrow on Happy Eyeballs, which solves that problem by effectively hiding it from the user and making your website still accessible. So the user doesn't suffer through a 20 or 40-second outage to get to the website. It doesn't fix the peering, but we need to fix the peering. But it makes it so when the v6 path is messed up, the user doesn't turn off v6. And you don't have an incentive to turn off v6 on your website either.
Okay, thank you, Dan. So regarding the management, the tooling, oh, sorry. And those are my colleagues, right? Keeping interrupting me. Come on.
We argue with each other all the time. But I'm going to reflect it back to here. The happy eyeballs things